Thank you for joining us today for the inaugural session of PropTech Power Talk series for the London PropTech Show 2025. I'm Zinish Imros, your host and guide on this exciting journey into the world of property technology. Whether you're a seasoned real estate professional, an investor, or simply curious about the future of property management, you're in the right place. In this session, we'll explore how digitization is reshaping the real estate landscape, uncover key trends in PropTech, and discuss the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. From AI-driven property valuation to blockchain-enabled transactions, we'll cover it all. So for today, our guest is Peter Schraubemade from Australia. It's great to have you with us, Peter. Please go ahead with your introduction and give us an overview of the work of your organization.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the PropTech Power Talks. Yes, my name is Peter Schraubemade. I fill a position that's called the Managing Partner of Reach Asia Pacific. Specifically, that is a role largely based out of Australia and New Zealand at the moment, although it is growing. And Reach Australia and New Zealand is actually, we have a sister operation called Reach UK, headed by Natasha and Paolo over in the UK. We are a venture capital firm, so Second Century Ventures out of America is responsible for the Reach programs, and I oversee it here. My job here in Australia and New Zealand and greater parts of Asia is to identify new forms of technology. Where relevant and pertinent, I would invest in those forms of technology. And the third part that I have is each year we select companies that we invest in, and we run them through an accelerator program, which is a way to bolster the investment that we've just made. So that's my day job here in Australia, and I fill a number of other bits and pieces across the industry. But in a nutshell, I hope that explains it to your viewers.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you with us, as you have commendable experience working with PropTech for so long. So as we delve into PropTech, we know that the fusion of property and technology is revolutionizing the real estate industry. From smart home devices to blockchain-powered transactions, PropTech innovations are reshaping the industry. So let's start by discussing the ways in which digitization is actually transforming the real estate sector. Over to you, Peter.
So as far as digitization is concerned, the biggest changes I see in the industry would be in the form sector. I would reference the two major changes that we've seen over the past 30 years, or 40 years, which would be the internet and the phone. Obviously revolutionized the way we do business as real estate agents or property managers or investors even. I feel as though the digitization of forms has been a technology that's existed out there. I began digitizing my own personal real estate franchises in 1998, so as long back as that. But I really felt as though the rest of the industry didn't follow me. Now that was something that I took on, and was a great expense to my franchise at the time being, but gave us a competitive edge over other offices. I do think that the pandemic period, or COVID, if we want to call it that, or whatever the heck those 2 years were that we endured, I really feel as though that made the digitization of forms a must, because we were put in scenarios where we actually just physically couldn't get in front of the consumer. And if you look at it from their perspective too, the consumer, it wasn't that the consumer didn't want to transact or do business during that period. It's just that it was impossible to get face to face and get those things done. So I feel as though, the largest way we've seen digitization is in our forms, whether they be regulatory, whether they be leases, whether they be contracts, almost across the board. If you look at property management in general, nearly all of the entry reports, exit reports that are done on properties, they're all digitized as well. There's very, very little paper and pen involved in an office anymore. And, there will be people lamenting that, but I think we're the better off for it.
Yeah. And AI also has played a great role in transforming the real estate sector. What would you have to say about blockchain for secure transactions and predictive analytics that are changing the landscape for the better?
Yeah, well, let's deal with them separately because they're two different types of technology. But blockchain in particular, Yeah, I use the analogy that in November of 22, I was given a bunch of topics to talk on that were topical in Australia. Blockchain was one of them. Cryptocurrency was another. There were three or four of them, and they were given to me in November. And I'd just come across this generative AI, and I actually said to the people, do you not want me to talk about that? I think that's a bigger deal. And they said no initially, but by February they had changed the subject completely to get rid of all of that other stuff. And the reason I use that as an analogy is I feel like that's what's happened as an industry. Blockchain to a lot of the consumers in the industry, whether they be agents or property managers, I feel like it's a bit of a dirty word. And the other issue with blockchain is that I can't find an agent who can actually tell me what blockchain is. Despite that, blockchain is a great technology. It's fantastic. The way it goes, I get excited about it because of the ledger-based system and the way it's able to structure things in a way that at the moment is unhackable. And I know probably later on in this conversation, we're going to deal with privacy and data security and things like that. And blockchain is a legitimate technology that combats that. But for whatever reason, we haven't really seen much of it since generative AI just rolled on over the top of it. My gut instinct is we'll see more of blockchain in record keeping, land registry offices, anything that has to do with us keeping records of either historic or current of things that have been transacted. That's where I see its place. But maybe we'll see a change in the not too distant future, and we'll see it back in the transaction. To move on to predictive analysis. Again, a great example. Before November of 2022, I was seeing a lot in the predictive analysis area, especially out of America, where their real estate system is subtly different. So they would be constantly, any agent is constantly looking for a way to sort of give themselves a way to find a buyer before somebody else. So they were using it a lot in lead generation, either for buying or selling. And so we were seeing a lot of it, but now it appears to be more of an afterthought to generative AI. So generative AI has come in and it's been able to discern all of these large language models and look at the data that exists between it. And what we see for predictive analysis is put on at the end to tell us more about that data. But I'd go as far to say that the lines between what is generative AI and what is predictive analysis are becoming so blurred that a lot of us don't know the difference anymore.
Yeah, that's sad. And how has digitization helped with the cost efficiency in the real estate industry?
Digitization, well, maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. I don't know whether it's helped with cost efficiency. Generative AI has helped for cost efficiency. Digitization, I mean, obviously we're not using paper and pens anymore. But we still have server costs. But if you want to look at something that has helped in driven cost efficiency, it would be generative AI, and mostly that is driven in the area of here I am in my role as a property manager or as the owner of an agency. A lot of the tasks that I used to do that would take me time have become much faster. And if we speed that up and look at the real bones of it, companies like Google, Uber, Facebook are reporting 30% increases from their coding and development departments because of generative AI, because they're able to code faster. And so those efficiencies are following through to other areas of our industry. We just don't realize them yet. But if we're talking about generative AI and efficiencies within agencies, I think, using the analogy of a listing description that might have taken a real estate agent 10 to 20 minutes to write in the past, it can be done in seconds now, and you can redo it if you don't like it in seconds again. We're seeing that. We're also seeing it improve communication. I see a lot of principals or the owners of real estate agents insist that their operational staff use ChatGPT to almost double check their communication preferences via email these days. And so if I'm a property manager and I'm writing an email to a difficult email to a tenant, disputing some kind of problem that's gone on with the tenancy, I'm able to describe that to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to make it, to deliver that message in a soft and approachable tone. And all of a sudden I've got this email that may have taken me 20 minutes to think up and rehash and double check with Betty, who's in the next stall to me, to see how it comes across to her. Now I can do that in seconds. So I am seeing those instant kind of, you'd almost call them copy upgrades and efficiencies in offices and agencies.
Yeah, and I also think that VR has also helped customers, like they have to go for property tours and explore like 10 properties before selecting one. I think that has caused cost efficiency for customers too. So digitization, it plays a pivotal role in streamlining processes, enhancing transparency, and improving customer experiences. Do you think with the increase in digitization, there is increased risk of privacy and that customers are concerned about it?
Risk of privacy breaches, I think, is probably more the word that you're looking for. I think breaches on the back of privacy would be the problem. Yes, in a word, yes. It has to be. When I started operating in real estate, everything was kept in a filing cabinet. And the risk that we had was a robber in a balaclava probably would break down the door and come in and steal those files if they really wanted the rental agreements that were in there. That was our biggest risk. And our regulation over here actually dictated, when I went digital in 1995, that I had to carry around with me a USB stick that was a backup of the files. So antiquated it was that the industry that we're in. These days, there are pros and cons. All of a sudden we've moved to cloud, and the benefit of that is I can operate from Australia and still run a real estate agency in the UK if I really wanted to, or whatever it may be. Everyone can get access to that data, and we've recognized that that's a good thing. Again, during COVID and the pandemic, we had people operating from homes, and moving to the cloud was kind of like, if you weren't currently there, you were pushed into that this is something that you had to do. Alongside that comes the fact that it's not just us that gets access to it, but it's a world of cyber criminals who want that kind of data for nefarious purposes. So yes, there is an increased risk. Having said that, security has gotten better. We're working on ways to, especially when it comes to the transaction. A big problem is the transference of money between real estate agencies, property managers, and landlords. And so there are a whole heap of new different forms of technology that are creeping up that deal with, anti-money laundering or siphoning off the funds for nefarious purposes at that end. But if you look at just really, really simple security options that we have in front of us that we're not using, multi-factor authentication. Another dirty word. Every agent hates it. I just want to send an email, but now I've got this multi-factor authentication that's popped up, and it's telling me that I need to enter another passcode, or I need to check my phone, or there's something that I have to do double. As animals, we go for the path of least resistance, which is the fastest. But if we actually just stop to think about the dangers of what that may occur, and so it raises an interesting point, Zinish. I think we, as if you're listening to this and you own an agency out there, the biggest thing you could be doing is educating your clients on things like multi-factor authentication, on how to identify spam emails or phishing emails or whatever they are, because at the end of the day, we can come up with the best of technology, but if we're not implementing it as humans, it's not going to make a lick of difference. So yes, in answer to your question, the increased risk of privacy breaches, we've opened that up to the world, but in accordance with that, we should be looking at the security that is available to protect that data.
Yeah, and I think that's one interesting takeaway from the conversation we had till now, that we need to educate our customers regarding this. What about the integration hurdles that are present in the real estate industry with respect to integrating technologies in the industry? Yeah,
well, this is a bit of a hot topic in Australia. Recently, I have been to two open forum type conversational conferences where it's free to ask questions of anyone to anyone. And as a representative of the prop tech community, I'm definitely seeing a lot of frustration and anger in the Australian clientele directed towards property technology providers at the moment. And it's, it's come as a result of market conditions over here, but also technology operates in a cycle. In the finance industry at the moment, we're seeing a lot of the banks own the technology that does a service. They own that tech, and they've bought it out. And if you're a startup in the fintech, it's quite difficult to get a vertical leverage. But then this term that we give to what happens next is called unbundling, where fintechs pop up and they do one of the functions of the major software better than the major software does. And another one will pop up and it will do this slightly better. And so we see this unraveling of what we might call legacy software. And so in Australia and New Zealand, we've seen a lot of amalgamation behind some of the bigger players in Australia where they've gone and acquired software. And the frustration points from that are around, we're kind of married to this software in my office. We're married to this software. It's been acquired by a larger player who potentially doesn't show us the same levels of customer service, who potentially is not they're not invested in actually educating us on how to use the software. When you look at HubSpot, for example, which is a massive CRM, if you're not familiar with it, one of the biggest in the world, HubSpot openly say that their average user uses only 5% of its potential capacity. And so within our prop tech companies, if you're looking at a CRM or something similar, it may be that you're only using a small amount of it. So there's a couple of things. As a prop tech provider, you need to be invested in educating the consumers and the clientele that use your software. You need to be educating them in how to best leverage that technology for their own purposes. There were other things. So ongoing support is an issue. We're finding property technology is moving that fast at the moment that there are new innovations coming out, and there's probably not the customer support to unveil that. Yes, we've got our main products over here and we've got them well and truly bolstered, but we haven't actually thought about how we're going to unleash these new products, and they're coming out daily. And probably the other thing that I see as a bit of an issue is the protection of IP or data from an agency's perspective. What happens when, if I want to integrate with a property technology provider, one of the questions that you should be asking as somebody who owns a franchise or an agency is who owns that data at the back of it? Am I going to be sure that my data is kept safe and secure? And all of these things are a bit of a frustration point over here. I feel as a community, we haven't done well in listening and servicing the needs of the consumer. And that's something that we've really taken on board in the last 3 weeks. And we're looking at ways that we can do that better.
Yeah, that's really important. So as you talked about the real estate industry in Australia, I learned that it's more stable than the industry in US and Europe. What would be the factors that contribute to that?
We're heavily regulated. So if you want to compare it with the US, if I do the wrong thing over here in Australia, I could have a jail sentence. Oh. In the US, if you do the wrong thing, you're probably going to get sued. That's the worst case scenario. But the stakes are different. Our government regulates the industry. You have a regulated industry in the UK as well. I think in many respects, we are probably further along that path. Like we're looking at the third or the fourth iteration of that regulation. And your regulation is provided, correct me if I'm wrong, by the NAEA over in the UK, and there's another firm, I've forgotten the name of it at the moment. But those provide the framework for what you're doing. Ours are government based, where we have what's called the Office of Fair Trading. They are the same jurisdiction that would look at, if I was sold a car and it didn't do what it was supposed to do. We have consumer protection built in. We also have that consumer protection built into our contracts. But the legal framework between the UK and Australia is fairly similar. If you want difference, then you go to the USA, where it's completely out the window. How we operate in Commonwealth countries is very different to how the US operates as a real estate body, even from the perspective that they have dual agents servicing the transaction. So as Anish, if you wanted to buy a property, you might deal with a buyer's agent. And if I was selling a property, I would deal with a listing agent. And as different, those two agents would come together and do the transaction. And that's a big point of difference in the US.
Wow. So what would you say about the role of your organization, of Reach, in real estate industry?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. So Reach is a bit different from other venture capital companies. A lot of my contemporaries who operate venture capital are subject to the shareholders above them, and they have a bunch of boxes that they have to tick in order to invest in something. But at the end of the day, it's largely driven by either a need or profit. Look, obviously, we like to be profitable as well. We wouldn't be running a business if we didn't. But probably the biggest differentiator for Second Century Ventures is the partnership we have with the National Association of Realtors. So, we effectively exist because of agents. So a lot of the technology that we're looking at is technology that would benefit agents in some way, shape or form. And a large difference between us as a venture capital is the way that we come along and partner with the industry in order to provide solutions for agents that are agent friendly. And I'll give you an example of that. On a weekly basis, I am pitched by somebody who says, I have a product that is going to take the agent out of the transaction. Obviously, Second Century Ventures is owned by real estate agents, so I couldn't invest in that. Even if I wanted to, it would be counterproductive. And so, but the technology that we do invest in, we actually spend quite a lot of time dealing with what are called the real estate institutes over here, getting their take on whether compliance is correct, whether it adheres to the regulatory framework, even what direction their members want to see as far as the technology is concerned. And then probably the other interesting one, which I haven't mentioned, is I serve as the Vice President of the PropTech Association of Australia, and that's a different role altogether. That's an advocacy body that exists to promote PropTechs and the community of PropTechs as a whole. We have things like awards ceremonies to recognise the players in our market who have done quite well, and we also do things like member meetups and forums where we talk about the issues that are central to property technology. Yeah, one of them would be the idea you raised before, integration hurdles. One issue we're dealing with at the moment from a PropTech association perspective is a big issue when it comes to agents in the amount of technology that they're going to be required to vet in the future. I have a personal belief that a lot of real estate agents will see more forms of technology by default, and they'll be required to be discerning as to which of those are ones that they want to adopt and partner with, and which of those they wish to dismiss. So that's a really interesting one that I don't think is central to Australia. I think that you're going to see that in the UK as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. So we are holding the third edition of London PropTech Show in April 2025, which is one of the leading real estate tech events in Europe. How do you think that B2B events like the London PropTech Show help in booming the industry?
Well, you're asking a guy who's built his entire career on networking. So
that's why I'm asking you.
For me, that's a no-brainer. I think I've attended over 3,000 in-person events in my career, dating back to when I was 18, and that's some amount of conferences. Haven't been to yours yet, but from my
hope to see you.
Sorry, what was that?
I said we hope to see you. Maybe.
Yeah, it would be great if I could get across there. I certainly would. It'd be good to visit my compatriots over in Reach UK as well. The thing about in-person events that are, and I think we learnt this during COVID and the pandemic period, is you just can't replace them. As good as we are with these cameras and these microphones that allow us to converse from continent to continent, there's something about coming together as a group of people that is just different and irreplaceable. And today we've talked about a lot of technology. We've talked about those forms of technology and how they sort of get into the market. But the one thing that I'd continue to impress upon real estate agents around the world is that it's all about the relationship that you have between yourself and whoever your consumer may be, whether that's a landlord or a tenant or a buying selling relationship. And to bring that back into live and in-person events, the place that those relationships are honed and we find new ideas and the sharing and the collaboration of ideas is at a live and in-person events. So I'd encourage anyone to attend a live and in-person event. I think they're vital to not just our industry but our growth and professional development as humans.
Yeah, definitely. And after the pandemic, we really need to have more in-person events, I guess. So those were some great insights from you, Peter. And thank you for joining us on the PropTech Power Talk. As we conclude today's session, remember that PropTech isn't just about technology. It's about transforming the way we interact with spaces, properties, and communities. So let's stay curious, embrace innovation, and continue exploring the endless possibilities that PropTech offers. Stay connected with us, share your thoughts, and keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep unlocking those digital doors in the real estate world. Thank you.
Thank you.